Welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, Episode 1. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm going to be here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And as this is my very first podcast, I thought I would share some background information about my lifelong fascination with dark entities and why I do what I do as a paranormal specialist. And then we're going to delve into a real-life paranormal experience, which I encountered back in 2018. So I have a rather unique perspective and approach to educating people about dark energy beings, which I've developed through my own experiences over the last 35 years. And boy, have I had some curly ones. I work from a non-fear-based approach, which challenges the general opinions in society about dark energy beings and demonic level beings. And I hope to help people understand these energy beings and their intentions from a different perspective. I have this undeniable curiosity about these tricky, energetic interlopers, and I love a good puzzle. Something that compels me to put on my detective hat and learn and uncover who these beings are, why they're here, how they affect us in this reality in which we live. So my work as a paranormal clearing specialist takes me worldwide, working remotely as a house healer and a personal energy clearer from my home in Tasmania, which is an island state of Australia. So as part of my job description, I focus on removing paranormal beings and the negative energetic imprints which draw these beings into people's homes, on the land, in the garages, in caravans, cars, anywhere really where people gather or live. These supernatural hitchhikers also like to lurk at times in people's energy fields, where they can upset the delicate balance in the human body, affecting people's sleep patterns, eating patterns, behaviour patterns, and a plethora of other energetic aspects within the person. And I've developed a really detailed process of removing these paranormal annoyers and helping restore the client's well-being. While learning the skills to work with dark energy beings, my adventures have been rather exhilarating and quite treacherous at times. No one else talks about dark energy beings the way that I do. I have a lifetime, 54 years of experience that I'm going to be sharing with you through this podcast. And it's full of fascinating experiences which have enabled me to understand these invisible beings from a unique perspective and share useful information with other people around me. So during this podcast, you're going to hear me talk about dark and demonic level beings. Now, I use those two terms to describe two different levels of dark energy beings. Occasionally, I will talk about spirits, but I don't class spirits in the lower vibrational realms, which I will be talking about most of the time. So these dark energy beings can be a tricky bunch to work with. Sometimes they're full of condemnation and distrust, but other times, as an energy worker and a house healer, I've built a really solid, respectful and compassionate working relationship with these beings. You're probably thinking, oh my God, this woman is a Fruit Loop. No, I get very good results working with these beings, moving them out of people's homes, out of people's energy fields, even out of people's pets, believe it or not. The other day, I worked on a chicken. Last week, I worked on a little dog who had some issues. And the energetic work that I do, especially with people, is part of a holistic approach. So I'll always send my clients to see their medical doctor, their mental health professional. If they come back with a clean bill of health from those two different medical practices, then it's got to be an energetic cause for the person's issue. So during each weekly episode, I will be sharing a real-life paranormal story with you and original information that I have learned through my experiences or through experiences I've had with client jobs. And I would also be up for sharing your paranormal stories and answering your paranormal questions. So if you would like to contribute, you can send your questions and stories to spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. I'll leave the email details in the description box for you. Now, for our very first paranormal story on this podcast. I'm quite excited to share this story. This was one that was a real game changer in my line of work. So this is a local Tasmanian experience from back in 2018, and it taught me that the devil is in the detail. The demonic triplet sisters. A bit of my background is I'm not a terribly social person. I don't go to a lot of events. But something came up on Facebook. A friend shared an event that she was having at another lady's house, and I hadn't met her before. And I thought, I'm just going to go. I want to go and just get out, meet some people. Well, I was meant to go to this particular lady's house because since 2018, we've built a really good friendship. I've done a lot of work for them energetically with paranormal issues. And this is the very first experience that I have noted down to share with you. So I met Kim at this aforementioned social gathering. And then this was in December in 2018. And we got on to the topic of paranormal beings. And she said that her daughter was being kept awake by invisible intruders in her bedroom. And could I come and have a look? She said that the spirits would talk and annoy her daughter all night, every night, and it had been going on for years. So we agreed that I would come and visit the following day. So I gathered all my tools, which is my pendulum and my folder with all my energetic tables. So the next day I arrived at Kim's house and I knocked on the door and I waited to be greeted by Kim. And as she opened the door, I looked into the house and I could see her daughter in the kitchen, sort of watching me, thinking, who is this new person who's going to be entering into their home? So we all sat down at the dining table and we started talking about my work as a house clearer, where I work with paranormal beings and how I use pendulum dowsing to find out where these beings are, what they're doing and what they're up to. And her daughter sort of sat there. She didn't quite trust me to start with. She was a little bit dubious because she'd been around other people who talked about paranormal beings and they hadn't really been able to answer her questions or help her in any way that was beneficial. So Kim and her daughter Rebecca shared some of their paranormal experiences which had been happening in Rebecca's life probably for the last 10 years. And also in any house that they lived in, there always seemed to be some paranormal occurrences happening. So as we're talking, their other daughter joined us and listened and shared some of her stories too. And as we're talking, I started to feel a little bit sick in the stomach, which is my very first sign of paranormal presence. Because our bodies are a natural sensing tool. So whether you see, hear, feel, just know that there's something around us that you can't see. I'm very much a feeler. I will feel it with my body. I will feel it with my senses, and I will just know that there's something that's not quite right in the house. So as I'm sitting there, I observe. This is what I've come to learn now, is that you don't dive in and start asking questions of these paranormal beings straight away. Is that you observe them, you see where they go, and you see what they do. So after I'd sat there for probably about 20 minutes, I was really starting to feel super, super sick. In the mind, I couldn't focus, couldn't think straight. So I thought, right, I'm going to get my pendulum out, which is my vocal tool that I use. It's my focus point. So when I do my dowsing, I don't just have to use my mind and my ESP senses, is that I can use this extension of my energy to connect with the energetic environment that's around us. So as I asked the questions, are there any paranormal beings in the house? And I got a very strong yes from my pendulum, which is a clockwise circle. And I asked, how many demonic beings in the house? And I got a 1, but it kind of wavered a little bit. It wasn't quite sure, and I wasn't quite sure how to read that. So I went with 1 at that point in time. So as the pendulum identified this one demonic being that was in the house, and people are thinking, how did she know it was demonic? Because I felt really sick. Like dark energy, I might get a bit of brain fog, feel a little bit like, I feel a bit queasy. I felt really, really sick in the stomach. And I knew when I got to the house, I was totally fine. My energy was normal. I'd felt fine all morning. Stepping into this home told me that there was something there that shouldn't be there. This is how my body works. This is how my senses work. As I'm doing my dowsing, this one being must have felt slightly annoyed or a little bit upset that someone's come into the house that can actually detect them. This is how they are. They're quite fascinating once you get to understanding them. So this being was in Rebecca's bedroom, which is Kim's daughter, and I got the feeling that something was standing at the door. Now, I'm not terribly visual with my paranormal senses. I'm more a feeler, like I talked about before. But as this being started to move towards me, I had this really unusual vision of a pair of very long legs wearing fishnet stockings and 6-inch heeled black stilettos. And you're probably thinking, what is she talking about? Sometimes these beings will project an image of what they want you to see. Now, this being felt very upset and annoyed that I was in the house. So it was projecting an image at me that it thought might, how can I put it? It gave this being a sense of air of authority because the way it walked was very dominating. Now, I only saw the pair of legs, and it was only for a fleeting maybe 2 to 3 seconds. And it was like, that's not from my head. I know that is not me. That is that being going, I'm here and I want you to know I'm in charge. It had this very I'm in charge strut about it. So this being that had been listening to our discussion stood right in front of me, like in my face. I could feel it. It was like trying to listen to Kim talking through a really thick fog. And she's looking at me like, it's here, isn't it? Yeah, she said, yeah, I can feel it, but I can see that you can feel it more than me. So she was like, yeah, that's it. Now, they gave this being a name, which I'm not going to share because it was very personal for Rebecca, the daughter, and I don't want to share it on a public forum. But this being had been given a name and it had been following Rebecca for many, many years. And it was about time that it left. So management, as I call them, God Source Creator Energy, had sent me to this social gathering that I never go to social gatherings, to meet Kim and Rebecca, to be there to help remove this disruptive, detrimental energy from Rebecca's life and from the home. So as soon as Kim said, it's here, isn't it? It actually disappeared, the fog lifted. So after we'd acknowledged its presence, this energy being disappeared back into the bedroom end of the house. Now, in this home, there were 3 bedrooms, all on one side of the building, and Rebecca's bedroom was in the middle, and that is the room that I felt this being went into. So I asked Kim, would it be okay for me to do a walk around the house? And I'd like to start in Rebecca's bedroom. Now, I'm not going to touch anything. Like I mentioned before, I use my body as a dowsing tool, and I'll be able to pick up where these beings are, portals, any psychic cording, any spirits that may be present. Usually come forward and say, please help me, I want to transition. So Kim got up and made a drink for herself and her daughters, and they sat at the dining table while I went off to the bedroom side of the house. I was drawn to go into Rebecca's bedroom, so I just partially shut the door, and she had a chair in her room. So as I sat down, I found a portal over her bed. Like I could feel it. I could see the energy. I could feel the pull of this whirling doorway, this whirling energetic doorway that leads into another reality. So portals can be opened through black magic, curses, spells, negative energetic imprints within the home. Now, this may not have been something that Rebecca created. It may have been there from actions or interactions that the previous owner created in the home. So anyway, the portal was closed through a process that I use with Archangel Raphael. So as I work with the dark energy beings, I also have a strong connection to the higher vibrational energies, angels, archangels, God source creator energy, whatever you want to call it. It's just that higher vibrational connection. As that portal was closed, the energy of the room changed. It wasn't swirling and heavy and made me feel really uncomfortable. As that doorway closed, there was half a dozen spirits that stepped up, and they were literally like, "Can you please help us? We want to go. We've been here for a very, very long time." I think they came with the land. I can't remember exactly because it was quite a long time ago that I did this clearing. But they were just pleading. They were just like, "I really, really want to go." So spirits can simply transition through intention. So I called in Archangel Azrael, who is the archangel who helps spirits transition into the afterlife. These 6 beings, I could see them literally held hands, held onto his hand, and away they went. So as I'm sitting there thinking about these 6 spirits and how lovely it was for them to be able to transition into the afterlife, the demonic being stepped up very quickly, put its hand into my energy field and grabbed me around the throat. Now, it was the most uncomfortable, I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was the most uncomfortable feeling that I have ever felt from any paranormal beings. They generally don't go hands-on, but this one was very, very nasty. It was not very happy. Now, at that stage, I hadn't dealt with a lot of demonic level beings. It was mostly dark energy beings, which are much easier to transition or to move out of people's homes. They go much more willingly. This being was probably, at that time, the nastiest one I had dealt with. So as I'm sitting there and I'm starting to feel quite faint and my thought processes just didn't happen. I just couldn't think about how to deal with this. I heard this very clear voice in my head that said, "We've got your back." And I will never, ever forget hearing that phrase. So after hearing those words, the grasp around my throat loosened to the stage where I gasped in this very, very deep breath and just sat there, just trying to center myself, trying to ground myself. And in my third eye, I could see this black mass of energy with all this kind of like tentacles coming out of this energy. And it was being surrounded by what I can only describe as angelic archangel type beings. And the being was literally taken away. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is something new. This is a moment. Now, what happened next was very, very interesting. As I'm sitting there watching this little sort of mini movie happening in my head, both bedroom doors on either side of the room I was in slammed. In that moment, I got up out of that chair and I walked to the door and I looked into the dining area. Now, sitting at the table was Kim and her 2 daughters. And just take that in for a moment. They're sitting at the table 2 seconds after I hear both doors slam. And I stand there at the door and I'm like, did someone go to the bedrooms? And they're looking at me with these shocked looks on their faces, these shocked expressions, and they're shaking their head going, no, we didn't go to the bedrooms. So in that moment, I spent probably about 5 minutes just walking around. I needed to calm myself down, needed to gather my energy. I walked over to the table and I sat with the ladies and we just kind of looked at each other. We had this moment where we're like, it's like being in a paranormal movie. It is literally like experiencing something that you have seen on screen. So once I composed myself, I talked about the portal that had been in Rebecca's room, about the spirits that had been transitioned, and also about the one demonic being that had been removed from Rebecca's bedroom. And the ladies just sat there looking at me, stunned, absolutely stunned. Now, while I'd been in the bedroom, Kim had got out her pendulum because she'd seen me using my pendulum at the table, just sort of demonstrating how I use it and what I do with it. And she'd got hers out. And she's like, I'm getting 3. I'm getting the number 3. And I'm just sitting there, like I'm exhausted. I've been at the house for 4 hours and I was really, really like brain tired. I just couldn't think anymore. So I observed what she said and I exchanged, a little bit more information with them, and I said that I'd come back and see them tomorrow. But I really had to go home now because I was tired. Like I'd had enough. 4 hours is a long time to be dealing with energetic beings. So the following day I rang Kim to see how Rebecca and the family had slept overnight. And Kim said that Rebecca had slept better. She was much more settled within herself. She was actually chatty and talking to people, not so quiet and spending time in a bedroom away from people, but there was still something that wasn't quite right. So she asked me if I could come back to the house. So I arrived at Kim's house at around about 1 o'clock that afternoon. So as we're sitting there having a cup of tea and talking about the events of the previous day, Kim is still talking about this 3. What is this 3? She said, I dreamt about this 3. This number 3 is really, really important. While Kim's talking, I'm getting that sick feeling coming again, and I'm like, oh, here we go. The bodily signs are a great way of identifying paranormal beings in the environment. And as she's talking about 3, I got this vision, triplets, 3 triplets. We had triplet sister demonic beings in this house. Now, 2 demonic level beings appeared from bedroom end of the house, and they came almost running at me and stopped right in front of me. They were really pissed. They were annoyed that their sister had been taken away by the archangels. They were seriously annoyed. Like my sleep that night had been quite disrupted. And in those days, I didn't realise that they could come to my house and annoy me during the night because they were disgruntled, you might say, about me having moved their sister on. So before these 2 beings could get into my space, I did not want any more throat grabbing or any harm to come to Kim, her daughter, or myself. I called in Archangel Michael and a plethora of other archangel beings to be present in the home. It was almost like having 50 bodyguards in the house. Seriously, it was very high vibrational. These 2 demonic beings stopped in their tracks. They were literally centimetres from my face. I could feel them. I had these waves of sickness. It's really hard to explain until you've actually experienced it yourself. And in my mind, I could see the angelic beings showing that they are there to protect us. These 2 demonic sisters did not want to go down the same path as their sister, who I think had been terminated by the angelic beings. I can't say for sure because that's not my place to know that information. So I wasn't told. But she hadn't come back. They hadn't gone to her. And they were a little bit confused. They were upset too. Like, now I have more compassion for these beings and understanding that they are energy, they feel emotion, and they can get just as annoyed when things happen to their family, just as much as we can. So anyway, back to the story. These two demonic beings stood in front of me. The angelic beings were surrounding us in the dining room and all through the house. I could just see them. You could feel their presence. These two demonic sisters, they chose to willingly leave the house. They left Rebecca, they left the family, they did not enter the home again. Because as I felt them leave, I said to them, if you come back, you will get the same punishment as your sister did. They didn't turn, they didn't look, they simply knew that they couldn't win. So they chose to go somewhere else. Now, where that somewhere else is, I couldn't tell you. But these beings have free will, so they can go anywhere in our environment where there are energetic imprints that attract them. So once these beings had left, the higher vibrational beings also at the same time left the house. We're all sitting there again, mouths open, just kind of looking at each other going, what just occurred? What just happened? And this is one of these stories that I'm sure I'm going to tell many, many, many times, the demon triplet sisters. And Kim and I we laugh about it now. It wasn't funny at the time, but now we can look back and go, oh my gosh, we both learnt so much from that experience. And since the three of those beings actually left Kim's house, they were never seen again, Rebecca's energy and her sleep and her behaviours improved to another level. This girl is very, very psychic, and psychic people are an attractant to higher vibrational beings, but also sometimes the lower vibrational beings will come looking. They're just checking you out, because it's all energy. We are energy in these physical bodies, the same as those beings. They're just pure energy. So I hope you found this paranormal experience interesting, and it gives you some understanding about how your body can sense changes in the environment. And it's not always tangible things that you can see. So next time on Perfectly Paranormal, I will be sharing with you another real-life experience. This is about a child spirit who came to stay. It turned out to be something else. And we're also going to explore why paranormal beings are here and what else they get up to. People are always asking me, who are they and why are they here? This is some of the information that I'm going to share with you in this podcast. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget to send me your paranormal questions and stories you'd like to share with the world. I'm always up for a good, true life paranormal experience. So I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.